Hey, so what I did was I created 3 different employees for this pay run so that you could see how different things happen for them. And you can see here the 3 employees are. And what I'd like to draw your attention to is these two, the Mr. Lion and Mr. Elephant, are on a weekly pay run, and the next payment date for the payroll is the 8th of April. And Mr. Giraffe is paid monthly, and the next payment date for Mr. Giraffe is the 30th of April. So that's 3 employees set up there. I just did very basic setups for them, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to run a pay run. You can find pay runs by clicking on Payroll, Pay Runs. And the first thing we do when we run a pay run is we click this button here, Add Pay Run. Now, this pop-up window, Add a Pay Run, pops up, and from here we have 3 options. We have the 2 different payroll calendars that I set up, the monthly one and the weekly one, plus there's the option for the unscheduled pay run. So if you come into any anomalies, discrepancies, need to add an additional pay run for whatever reason, you can use the unscheduled pay run. But for our purposes, we're going to select the weekly pay run, and notice that it says week ending 7th of April 2015. And click on Next. And here the pay run has opened up for us. Now notice that I went away and I actually added a few more employees just so you could see a bit more depth of what's happening here. So let's have a look at what we have in front of us. On the top bar, it's saying week ending 7th of April 2015, and then across the top it's telling us our total earnings, our pay-as-you-go withholding figure, our superannuation figure, our net pay, the current status of the pay run, which is draft, and the payment date, which is the 8th of April 2015. In the next block down, it's telling us the 2 employees who are included in this. And note the options here. It can you can sort the columns. We only have 2, so it doesn't make much sense. But if you open up and you had perhaps 10 or 20 or 30 employees there, that actually might be quite useful. Now, I'm going to just jump down here and just go through a few of these options down here before I go through and look at the actual payslips. Now here it says add a payslip message. So what we could do is say we can add a payslip message to go to all employees, just simply like that. And that will just be attached. So we don't want to put something private on that payslip for an individual person, but we can put a message there for everyone. We also have the options down here to delete the pay run or reset the pay run. So if you realize that you've created a pay run and you've done some editing to it, but then realize you want to start back at the base point, you would come and reset it. So let's pop back up here. Over here on the right hand side, it has the drop down arrow included, and we have the option here, include all employees, exclude all employees, exclude all empty pay slips, so that first one would be excluded, sort by included and sort by excluded. Okay, so you've got a few sorting and inclusion options there. Now notice that the green arrow is ticked, so when you actually open up, your green arrows may or may not be ticked. And so if I actually untick on that, he is crossed through the Fierce line, Mr. Fierce line is crossed through and not included in the pay run. But simply to include him, I just tick this. Not a huge deal at all. Now let's drill down and look at the detail of the Fierce line payslip. So this was a new employee that I created, and I'll just pull down so you can see some detail here. So the employee is Fierce line and the current net pay is 0. This person works on a casual basis and the ordinary hours are at $15 an hour, and let's just say this person worked 10 hours. So $150. due to the tax rate of this person, they haven't accumulated any PAYG tax withholding, so that amount remains at zero. And as they've been paid under the $450 superannuation threshold, they're not accumulated any superannuation entitlements either. So it just is very, very simple. I'll pull down so you can see all the way down. It's all very, very simple. Casual employees, so no leave entitlements. And if I wanted to, I could reset the payslip, but I don't. That's completely fine. I'm just going to simply click Save, and I'll scroll down again, and I'll click Close. And so now, this one you can see it was last edited today. You can see today, and it's $150, the earnings on that, with no tax and no super, as I said. Let's go in and look at Mr. Grey Elephant. I'll scroll down, pull down so you can see more information there. Now, the ordinary hours, remember we set them up at 40 hours at a rate of $40, and that's $160. So that's, that's $1,600. So that is perfect. What do we expect there? Then the next line down was overtime, time and a half. So notice that the rate has automatically calculated there. We set it up in the preferences, and it is 1.5 times $40, which is $60. So let's just for argument's sake say, 3 hours worked at time and a half, and 1 hour was worked at double time. And you'll notice the $80 rate there automatically popped up, and it is double the $40 rate. We didn't need to add anything there, of course. If I did need to add something, I did have the options here to add it, but that was part of its Mr. Elephant's template. And you could have left them at zero. That would have been perfectly fine if no overtime was worked. Now, depending on the amount earned and the tax rates that were set up for this person, they've identified that $495 in tax needs to be withheld, $495 in tax. And as the amount paid is over the superannuation threshold, there is a percentage of 9. This is the current one as we talk. In May 2015, the superannuation rate is 9.5, and that is 9.5 of that 1860. So if you're looking at this at another date and the superannuation rate perhaps has changed, then it will be slightly different to you. I have it set up as a statutory rate. And whenever you're using Xero and you're on the Australian version of Xero, the statutory rate will automatically come through correctly. Also on the template were travel costs if they needed to be reimbursed, but we will leave that alone. And down here, the total payments, this is saying the bank account that this is actually going to be paid to. And this is the final amount. So it's actually going to be 1860 less 495. So the gross pay less the PAYG tax is what the final payment is. The $152 is an expense to the business and accumulates as a liability, and the employee doesn't actually see it with the payslip. We then scroll down and we have the leave accruing. So annual leave is accruing at 3.0769 hours. And personal leave is accruing at 1.5385 hours. That's based on a 40-hour week. So when you do this yourself, you need to check whether your award or your business rules are a 40-hour week or a 38-hour week or something different. I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to come down here again and click Close. So you save it and then you can close it off. They're both now sitting there, and I'm happy with that PayRun. And I'm going to come down here, and I'm actually going to post the PayRun because I'm happy with that. We've checked it all off. We've added all the additional hours, and I click on the green Post PayRun. Are you sure? Yes, I am sure that I want to post it. And it says up the top here, the PayRun has been posted for the PayRun weekly PayRun week ending 7th of April 2015. Fantastic. Now, before I move on further, I want to have a look down here. Click on the drop down option here, and the first option I have is download ABA. So if I was going to electronically pay my employees, which I do encourage you to do, and you can do this via a sort of a batch payment feature, you would download the ABA file. Now, before you can do this, you need to speak to your bank and say, how do I process an ABA file with you? And what typically happens is you download the ABA file from Xero, and then you upload it into your bank. And you may have, from your existing system, have used that already. It's very simple once it's set up, and it will save you a lot of double handling. You need to have the bank details of all the staff in Xero, and you need to have your own bank details in Xero, which you should be with all the things that we filled out as we went along the way. The other option down here is email Payslips. So I simply click on the email Payslips button, and I can select the staff who the Payslips need to be emailed to, and I'll simply go email Payslips, and Payslips have been emailed. So that was a very quick process. And finally, I have Revert to Draft. So in this instance, I don't need to do this, but if we decided there was a problem with this PayRun for whatever reason, I could revert it to draft. Now, the other button I have here is View Reports. Let me pull down a little bit further. View Reports, so I can see the payslips. So let's go and have a look at the payslips. This opened up a new window. You might not notice it, that opened up a new window. And you can see here just the very basic payslip. Employment details, annual salary, the address, the pay period, the payment date, the total, and the net pay. Please note that if you tell them that you're paying them on the 8th of the 4th, you actually have to pay them on the 8th of the 4th. You can't put a payment date in there and then pay them a different date. You must pay them the day that you're actually telling them to pay. Then it comes down, salary and wages, and scroll down. Payment details reference with the message there. Remember the office barbecue on Friday. This is the second payslip, which was a little bit more complicated. You can see all the different ordinary hours. Notice how when we ran the pay run, ordinary hours was called something else, but then as you see it on the payslip, it's very simply called time and a half. The rates are identified, the pay that's come through, the PAYG's there, the superannuation and the actual fund is listed there, and the accrued annual leave hours are listed there, and the payment details and the reference. Fantastic. But that's showing you what the payslip looks like. Popping back here, viewing reports. So I clicked on, I don't think you can see it, but I'm just clicking on a tab at the top there. I can now look at the payroll employee summary report. So here is my payroll employee summary report. It's very simple. I really like this report because it's very simple. This is my earnings. This is the tax, super, and the net pay. So the PAYG tax amount you should see in the balance sheet for April should be $495. The superannuation liability we should see in the balance sheet as at this date should be $152 liability and $152 expense. And the net pay, the wages expense that you should see in the profit and loss statement should be $1,515. Okay, so we will go and look at that, make sure that you're happy with all of that. Very neat, tidy report. And if I was doing the books for someone, I would print that off and show them that this is what I've paid the people so they have a good idea. Quick, nice, neat summary. Okay, coming down to view reports, I also have the payroll activity details report. Let's click on that. And this is identifying the payroll activity details for the date, ordinary hours. This is for Mr. Fierce Lion, and splitting out the ordinary hours, the net pay, and the final payment for this person. And then Mr. Grey Elephant, who has a lot more going out, just all the actual lines of detail for him. We're only seeing a week here. Ordinary hours coming through to $1,600. Double time, $80 there. the overtime hours, which is exempt from super, it's actually swapped lines there, which is a little bit confusing, but that's the $180, that 3 hours by $60. The pay-as-you-go withholding tax is $4.95. The superannuation is detailed, the net pay is detailed, and the payment is detailed. So again, same information we saw in the initial pay run, and this is a nice way to see a pay run, just in kind of a different format. Drop down and pay run journal. So let's have a look at the pay run journal. So this is the pay run journal. So for those of you who grew up liking debits and credits, this is a nice journal to look at. So this is once the pay run was posted, it actually created a pay run journal. And when you have a journal, your debits always equal your credits. So down the bottom here, you can see my debits and credits are both $2,162. So let me go through and explain what's happening here for those of you who want to have an understanding of what's going on here. Now, if you don't need to know this depth of knowledge, just scoot ahead a bit, okay? But I want to go through this because for those of you who understand debits and credits, you look at this and it makes a lot of sense. For those of you who don't, I think it's actually really useful to know this. And sometimes you think that these accounting solutions that are so whiz-bang, they're not actually doing the underneath side of things, but they are. It's always debits equaling credits underneath. So the first line is my earnings, and that went to wages and salaries, and that's an expense account. When an expense account increases, the nature of it increases is debit, and so the expense increased by $2,010. The next line down is my tax, which is my PAY withholding payable account. That's a liability account. And the nature of a liability account is credit. So that means when a liability account increases, it is credited. So that has increased by $495. The next line down is my superannuation expense account. The natural nature of an expense account is a debit. When the superannuation expense account increased, it's debited $152. The next line down is my liability account, my superannuation liability account. And when a liability account increases, the natural nature of it is to be credited, and that has been credited $152. And then we have our wages payable. Our wages payable payroll account, this is a liability account, and again, that has increased liabilities. The nature when you increase a liability is to credit it. That means $1,515 will be sitting in the balance sheet, and when you actually make the payroll payment, it will reduce from that amount. So if you paid it all in one lump sum, $1,515, it would reduce your wages payable account there to zero, which is what we should be seeing. Let's pop back over here and look at our reports and look at bank payments. And this is saying, okay, so what this is saying to me is when I set up the accounts, I put in the bank details for Mr. Grey Elephant, but I didn't put in the bank details for Mr. Fierce Lion. So that means I wouldn't actually be able to process these payments via an ABA file because I didn't have Mr. Fierce Lion's bank details in there. But of course I could put them in and it would update there if I went through and put them in. Maybe I'll do that down the track, but I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, so now what I want to do, so notice how all of these reports, you could print them out, you could look at them. I wouldn't necessarily bother unless I needed to go back and check something. What I do want to highlight to you is I'm going to pop back in here. What I do want to do is I want to show you two reports. I'm going to click here on reports, and the first report I'm going to click on is balance sheet. And What I'm looking at here is my balance sheet. Now I set the preferences to compare to nothing and compare no periods. I just want to show you very, very simply what's happening. And the balance sheet here is as at the 30th of April. I can't actually go in and specify a specific date on the balance sheet. And what I have here is what I was showing you in the other reports. My PAYG withholding payable is sitting at $495. My superannuation payable is sitting at $152. And my wages payable from payroll is sitting at $1,515. And the total current liabilities, this is the total amount the business currently owes due to payroll, is $2,162. The total amount the business currently owes for payroll is $2,162. Okay. Now, what I also want to show you is I'm also going to show you the profit and loss. So I'm looking at the profit and loss, and you can see for the month of April, I have the superannuation expense of $152, and I have the wages and salaries expense of $2,010. Now, I'd also like to show you two little things. See if this works for us. Compare payroll tracking. Look at that. Okay, so do you remember that we had tracking allocated to some of our employees? And so this is saying to us the engineering group of employees accumulated wage and salaries of $150. The marketing group of employees accumulated both superannuation and wages and salaries expense. Now, this is very simple. What we're looking at is very simple. But can you see how if you had a lot of staff involved, how it would really easily and simply pull out that information for you and assist you in understanding where the expenses are, where you can grow the business, whether you can afford to put on new employees in particular areas. So I think that's really neat. We didn't actually put any projects in there yet, but we have allocated an individual employee who's been allocated to the different areas. A single employee can't go across engineering and marketing, while in real life they may be able to. We can't do that here. We don't have much other information we have no other information in the profit and loss statement, but I do want to remind you, remember on our layout options, I'll just pull that down a bit so it's easier for you to see. We created a layout, so I'm just going to choose a layout. And I'm going to choose the payroll training layout, and we're going to apply that. So see what it's looking like now? And then when I apply it, it actually has subtotal that. Very nicely, I have people expenses, and then I have total people expenses. It's repetitive because we've got nothing else in there. However, if you've got a lot of information in there, that really highlights and groups what the people expenses are looking like. And I think that that's a good thing to do, because that makes it easier to identify where the expenses are happening. Okay. What I'd like to do now is click on payroll and talk a little bit about timesheets. So I'm dropping down here, and here are my timesheets. So I'm clicking on that. And here is my timesheet area. You can see at the top I have options to look at all the different timesheets. I don't actually have any timesheets in there yet, but I have that option to look at timesheets, the start date and the end date of the timesheets, the different employee groups of the timesheets. You'll only see that if you put in tracking, which I discussed earlier. And you can call up a different name and just view individual employees' timesheets, which is excellent. Then down here, we don't have any timesheets, but we can look at them by first name, surname, the period it's relevant to, the status, when they were last edited, and the hours covered in the timesheet. So why don't we go and add a timesheet and have a look at what happens. So click on this button, Add Timesheet, and I'm going to select the Fierce Lion, Mr. Fierce Lion, and this will be for the next week, which is the 14th of April. And I'll click Save. This is a draft timesheet. You can see the name, the status being draft, the week ending. Notice I could probably move between the weeks there. And then I'm going to put in the earning rate. Clicking on the drop down, I can select the earning rate. This will be ordinary hours for the first line. And project tracking. Notice I click in there and the project tracking, let me say this will be for the blue project. And I can come in and put in some hours. So let me put in, but I'm going to add another line and I'm going to keep this as ordinary, but this time the project tracking is for a different operation. And I'll just put in. Notice I was actually able to put in hours on the weekend, but the weekend is actually faded. And I'm going to just add one more line. I think you get the point of what's going on here, but I'll just add some overtime hours, and we'll add some overtime hours to the red project. So for this project, the total hours worked was 25.5 hours. Okay, now down the bottom I have the option to delete the timesheet, save it as a draft, and approve it. Now I have payroll right to approve this timesheet, but some users will not have that right. So I am going to approve the timesheet, and that has been approved. Now, it does have the option down here to save as a template if that's a regular thing. I'm not sure whether it will be for this gentleman. And it does have the option to revert to draft. Okay, so remember they worked, Mr. Lyon worked 25.5 hours. Let's go and run the pay run. So popping up here, payroll, pay run, and that was the previous pay run, the one that we have processed. That's the pay run history that we've processed. Let's click add a pay run, select a pay period, and let's choose the weekly one and click next. Now, do you remember when we called that up last time? The very top line, Mr. Lyon, it was actually all the information was 0. But now because we had a timesheet feeding in, that timesheet information has filled out the details. So let's click in on it and have a look what's there. The ordinary hours is filled out, excellent. The overtime hours is filled out, excellent. Notice that looking at this, you don't know what jobs the person has been on. So if you need to allocate the wages to a job, you need to do that via the timesheets. You can't do it once you're in the pay run. I'm not going to make any changes to that because I'm happy about that. Fantastic. I'm happy about that. You can see all of that. And I'm going to close that. And I just want to just briefly show you Mr. Elephant. Remember with Mr. Elephant, we allocated him some annual leave. Remember, I think he was going to Byron, and that has calculated here. Annual leave, $8 has come through and calculated there, and the ordinary hours, which typically on the template was 40 hours, has been reduced by that 8 hours there. So that has all sorted itself out. No worries, no need to sort of go through your payroll book, no need to go through your post-it notes or your diary. It all filtered through automatically. So that's fantastic. And I know that for staff I have seen put on payroll, that's been a huge relief for them. Okay, so no other changes there. We'll just close that. Oh, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back there just to show you what would happen. And let's put some travel costs on there. So these are travel costs that we're reimbursing. Perhaps he did some traveling and we need to reimburse those costs, and that's how we're doing it. So the payslip has been updated. Close the payslip. And we have the 2 payslips there. We're happy about that. Let's add another payslip message. So second week of the business, and we've added another payroll message, and we're going to post that pay run. Are you sure you want to post the pay run? Yes, we are sure. Excellent. So now it's telling us the pay run has been posted for the pay run weekly pay run, week ending 14th of April. I'm actually going to duplicate the tabs at the top, and I want to go in and show you what the balance sheet looks like. So I'm going to click on Reports, Balance Sheet, and look what we now have. We now have The PAYG withholding payable has increased, the superannuation payable has increased, and the wages payable has increased, and they're all sitting there as a liability. And let's go and see what's happening with profit and loss statement. And if we look at our profit and loss statement, we can see superannuation expense has increased. We also have the national travel expense there, and we also have the wages and salaries expense there listed, and that has all increased. And we should be able to see some project tracking here. So yes, we can see the blue project has been allocated some wages and salaries, the red project has been allocated some wages and salaries, and the projects that were unassigned that didn't go through on the timesheet, they're sitting here. Okay, so you would need to assign all staff members via timesheets to generate, make sure that they're allocated to all project trackings, if that's what you wanted to do. In this scenario, what I want to do is add a pay run, and this time I'm going to add the pay run for the monthly pay run. Clicking on next, and we have one person selected, and that's Ms. Giraffe. So looking at Miss Grumpy Giraffe, you can see she has in the month 160 hours at a rate of $40. Now we remember that Grumpy Giraffe did take a holiday, but if I click here on the add earnings line, I actually don't have the option to add leave that way. And in fact, I have to go and do it via her template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to payroll, click on employees, and then I'm going to drill down here on Giraffe and Ms. Giraffe. I am going to click here on leave, and I am going to add a leave application, annual leave, Sunny Coast, a beautiful part of the world. And let's drop back into April, and we'll just suggest it's going to be the 24th of April. 24th of April pops in there, 8 hours, and we're going to save that. So we're recognising that 8 hours leave was taken. So we recognise annual leave of 8 hours has been taken. So this is the pay slip now, and we have 152 hours at $40, and we have 8 hours at $47. Notice the rate change. Notice the rate change. That's because this administrative staff, Miss Giraffe, was on leave loading. She had leave loading allocated, which means she is paid 17.5%. So let me just click to this. Annual leave is usually paid at the same rate as ordinary hours, but some people get annual leave entitlements which are at 17.5%. Okay. And if I pop back into her template and just show you where this was, it's Grumpy Giraffe, click on taxes. See there, it says eligible to receive leave loading, and that has meant that she's eligible to get that leave loading, and that's how it's flowed through into her wage template. But also, when I click on settings and I click on payroll settings and I click on pay items and I click on leave down here, if I look at leave, there the leave loading is set at 17.5. But unless the person had it set up in their payroll tax area, they wouldn't be entitled to that. So that is how that has fed through, and she now has $47 there, which is excellent. So it was 160 hours and it has been reduced. It has been reduced by the leave that was taken, which was 8 hours, and it was the rate of $40, but because the leave loading has been applied to that rate, it is now $47. And that has all flowed through, and we can save that, and we can close that, and we can post the pay run on that. So we're happy to post the pay run on that. Yes, we want to post the pay run. This is what the payslip looks like for Mr. Gray when he receives it via email. There's this nice bright email notification, and then if I scroll to the bottom, it's actually an attachment, and I can click on the attachment. Now you might not be able to see all of that because of the way my screen's set up, but it's the exact same payslip that we saw when I showed you that in Xero. So we have set up payroll, we have set up employees, we've processed pay runs, several pay runs. Now we've processed 3 pay runs on both weekly and monthly employees, and we've used timesheets. So we've achieved quite a lot in payroll. So hopefully you've learnt a lot as we've been going along there. I'm just going to work on the payrolls that I have, the 3 that I have in the system, and I'm going to pretend I'm going to come to the end of the period and I'm going to run a BAS. Now I need to have access to the Advisor tab to do that. Click on Advisor, click on Activity Statement, and choose the period. So the period is going to be 1st of April through to 30th of June, and I'm going to update that. And I have the activity statement here from the 1st of April to the 30th of June, and that business activity statement would be due for payment probably up until about the 28th of July. And I'm scrolling down, and of course there's no information in here because I've not done anything else other than payroll. Now unfortunately the payment information, the payroll information doesn't automatically fill out in Xero, so you actually need to go and manually enter this information in yourself. So to get that information, you need to identify W1, which is the total salary, wages and other payments here, total salary, wages and other payments. And you also need to identify the amounts withheld from payment, which is shown at W1. Now, the easiest way to do this is to go to the reports area. So I'm going to click on my tab, click on reports, click on all reports, and I will come down to the right hand side and I will select payroll employee summary, and I will select employees, all employees, and I'll select this quarter because I'm still in this quarter while I'm processing it. But of course, if it was last quarter, you'd select that one. And here I have the earnings, the total earnings, the total tax, the total superannuation, and the net pay. My total earnings there are 10,459.75, and my tax is 2,420. And I pop back into my BAS and I enter in the information 10,459. I don't put in the decimals, and here I put in 2,420. And what this ends up with, nothing else happening in this file, is that the payment due is $2,420, and I'm happy with that. So what I would do with my business activity statement is I would publish it. And it's published for that period, and that would be it. I would be fine with that. So it's published, and I there have it published. It's sort of fixed in place there, and I can go and refer back to it as I need to. Now the next thing that I would do is I would come over here into my accounts area, and in my purchases area where I am going to record bills, I would come here and I'd click on new, and I'd create a bill recognising that I owe the Australian Taxation Office some money. This is a new client for me, and the date would be 10th of July 2015. The due date would be 28th of the 7th 2015, and the amount payable is $2,420. That is PAYG withholding, And that is the bill recognising that payment that's due. Now, I just want to mention PAYG withholding is not the same as PAYG IT, which refers to income tax. And you may have to be paying, as you go, company tax. But that is not the same as this. This is PAYG withholding, which is money withheld from employees that the business is paying. So I'm just going to approve that. Okay. And that is exclusive of GST, nothing really to do with GST. And I could record the payment down here on the bottom left. I'm not going to, but I could record the payment that recognizing that I actually paid it. What I'm going to do is when I go in and reconcile it, you'll see me do it that way. Now, the other thing I need to do is I need to recognize the superannuation payments. So I'm going to pop back into my reporting area, click on reports, all reports, and I'm going to select my superannuation accruals report. And for all employees for this quarter, because I know it's for next quarter, but it's for this quarter. And I'm going to select an individual fund, just so you know what it is, ANZ Smart Choice, and I'm going to update it. And you have there I owe ANZ Super Choice Fund $656.45. Okay, that's how much I owe them. And I'm just going to show you the other option there, Sun Super, and I'm going to update that. And I owe Sun Super $304, and that's the superannuation payment that I owe them. Okay, so let's go in and look at my current reports. Under my reports, let's look at balance sheet. My balance sheet for May, because I've only really run things up to that point in time. None. In fact, I'll do it to June just so you can see, but nothing else should be there. Now, a balance sheet, always think of a balance sheet as a photograph of a point in time of the business's net worth. It's just a photograph. And you can see here, these are all liabilities for me. I owe them my PAYG, my superannuation, and my wages payable. I haven't recognised the payment of that in my bank reconciliation area, so I need to go and do that. And I'm going to come up to the top. What I do is I right click on the tab at the top and then I duplicate it just to bring up another screen to make it easier for me to navigate. And I click on reports, click on profit and loss. And I'm going to do a few things here. So I'm looking at April and my superannuation, my travel expense, my wages is sitting there. Let's just, for the sake of it, we'll go show date range. We're going to show the date range for June all the way back through to April, and we'll update that. It won't be any difference, but there you go. For the April through to June, that's the full amount. And I also want to go and show you. I also want to look here at payroll tracking, how that has affected it. So that is split out between administration, engineering, and marketing. And notice that everything is taken up. There's nothing that has been unassigned. And if you had a number of staff members, that's excellent. You can see, the administration area is costing them a lot of money. The engineering area is not costing them very much money at all, and the marketing area is costing them a lot of money. So probably some issues there that need to be sorted out. Let's go and look at the project tracking. And this is what the project tracking is looking like at the moment. So we've got blue and red, and we've got an unassigned amount. So that's looking good at the moment too. But I'll pop back and just keep on the payroll tracking, and let's go back. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to my dashboard. And I'm going to go through the process of reconciliation, which we haven't done yet. We have in the business been paying a lot of people, but we haven't reconciled it yet. So come to the dashboard and click on the bank account. Now, we're in a training environment, so I don't have real bank feeds coming in. I've created them. And I'm going to click reconcile my accounts. And let's work through these with me. Okay, so what we have here is we had on the 8th of April, these wages were paid out. So fierce line. So what I'm simply going to do over here is and it is the payable account it's coming out from. And I'll simply copy what I have there. So I've created a contact and I have allocated the payment to that liabilities account. I'm going to pop down here and do the same thing. This is Gray. And that's again a new contact. 804. You do get to know the numbers, but if you didn't, you could just type in wages, and I'll just grab the reference there. And that was week one's pay recognized. Okay. Now look what's happened. We moved to the 15th of April and notice there's only one payment. There's only one payment here on the 15th of April. What we did was we created, perhaps we did a batch payment, a bulk payment, and it only recognised one single amount coming out of the bank account. Don't worry about that. If you had maybe 20 staff, fine. You just got one payment coming out of the bank account. And what we're going to do is we'll call it. So this is effectively going to create a contact in your Xero file, but that's okay. And again, it's going to be allocated to 804, wages payable, and we're going to call it weekly staff wages. And this is going to be a common one from now on. We've worked out we prefer to do it that way, and it's a lot quicker and simpler, and it's simply weekly staff wages. You notice I've got lion and elephant wages there, but imagine if you've got 20 staff on, you're not going to have all of that reference in there. You're just doing the grouping there. Now, the next one down is, remember that monthly payment that happens, and that's the Grumpy Giraffe's wages. So we can create a new contact there. This again will go to the exact same liability account, and we'll put in the reference there. Fantastic. Fantastic. So what we have done is recognized all of the pay runs that we have processed. We paid them out, and now we are reconciling them. So the reconciliation process is about coming up here and clicking OK. I entered the information, and now I'm going to go through and just click OK on all four of those. It's kind of like a game of Snap or a game of Tetris as we kind of clear the blocks here. Excellent. And that final one. So now what I want to do is I'm going to pop back over to the balance sheet. And this is my balance sheet. It hasn't updated yet because I haven't asked it to update. But notice here, wages payroll, that amount there of payroll. Let's update it. And fingers crossed, wages payroll has been reduced. And what we have is the amount has come out of the bank account, and what it's recognized is I still have a liability of $100, and that was to reimburse someone for travel expenses. So I didn't properly allocate that. So I needed to still pay them for those travel expenses. Okay, that's what that $100 is. But typically that would have reduced down to zero. Pop back into, didn't affect anything else, didn't affect my PAYG, didn't affect my superannuation, and I still owe someone some travel expenses. Pop back into my bank reconciliation area, and you can see here I paid the Australian Taxation Office, and here is the bill that was sitting in there, and I am reconciling that. Excellent. And now here, these are the two superannuation payments. Now you do have another facility for paying superannuation in Xero. which is if you come up here and click on payroll, and here via here you have to apply for it, and it will do all of the payments for you. But in this file I haven't done that, so I'm going to come down and I'm just manually I've sort of manually made the payments there. So I'll call it to, it's quite a long name, so I'm just going to copy it. Who is it to? It's to ANZ Smart Choice, and it's superannuation payable. Okay, not the expense, the payable amount. And again, I'm just copying that. I put good references in, so I didn't need to write them all out again. And in this one, I'm paying Sun Super, and that's to super payable too. Fantastic. And just as a little reference down there, fantastic, paste. And I am going to click OK on that. And I'm going to click OK on that. And that's sorted. That's sorted. I'm going to notice my accounts aren't balancing there, so I'm just going to refresh the screen. And it's now balanced. Okay, sometimes you just need to refresh the screen to make that balance. Let's pop back into the balance sheet and update the information here. And hopefully, looking at June, it's still recognizing that they're sitting as liabilities in June. But what I'm going to do is just move it through to July. We're in a training environment, so it's a little bit... Oh, can I do that? And because it's a training environment, it's not allowing me... Okay, because it's a training environment, it's not allowing me to just move forward that date and look at it at a forward date, because it kind of doesn't make sense. So I should have tested that out beforehand. But I can assure you that the PAYG and the superannuation payable would have dropped down to 0. And the wages payroll... that one we would pay out that amount as a travel expense there. And if I pop over to my profit and loss, none of that will have changed, because nothing what we did there actually changed that. The expenses all remained the same. So the one last thing that we need to have a look at is payment summaries. So this is quite, hopefully quite straightforward here in Xero. Click on payroll and click on employees. To be able to do this, you need to have all the information in your Xero file, and you need to make sure everything is up to date and reconciled, and all the numbers are correct and all the details are correct before you go through and do this. So what I'm going to do is going to look pretty simple. However, yet you do need to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So I'm going to click on payment summaries. And if we scroll down here, we have the legal name, the ABN, the postal address, and I'll put myself in as a signatory. It requires you enter phone numbers. I think I'll leave the fax number out. I'm going to confirm. And again, sorry, that's come up, and you can see payment summaries. There's information there. There's a video there to help you and links to support you. I'm just going to hide that. This is for June 2015, and we have gross payments, PAYG, total allowances for these people, and we can select the people and publish their payment summaries. I'm not going to go through all the details of that area. You're going to need a specialist to assist you with that. I'm just sort of showing you the technical side of publishing the payment summaries. Click on publish. Once you've published them, you then have the option to send to the employee or send to the ATO, which of course you need to do. And that process works really, really quickly. Once you've actually sent to the ATO, these options here will change, and it will tell you what has happened and what you've actually done with it. If you realise you've made a mistake, you can unpublish it and amend it and republish it. So there you have a really, really basic overview of payroll. I hope you have found that useful. I encourage you to talk to a specialist if you need further assistance. and I encourage you to speak with your BAS agent or your accountant. So my name was Heather Smith. Please subscribe to my video channel and like this video and share it with people who might find it useful. Thank you very much.